Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order and move on to agenda item 16A, Commission General Regulation 419, LCB File R158-12, Trapping Trail Closure, Chief Game Warden Rob Buonamici.
For the record, Rob Buonamici, Chief Game Warden. Yesterday we had the workshop, and as you'll recall, there's the LCB version that they came up with, and then based on the trapping committee's meetings and motions passed at the trapping committee, the version that's highlighted in yellow with the yellow highlights is the version based on the trapping committee motions. And from what I took away from yesterday's meeting was that there was quite a bit of agreement on the trails that were listed, and some still controversy that needed to be worked out on the roads. So my recommendation would be to work off the yellow highlighted version, since I think that's going to be the most complete to start with, and then I can record the changes made to that version, and then we'll then reincorporate, try not to make this complicated, but it's what has to be done, reincorporate everything into LCB's original draft version. So we'll have all the changes transposed to that. But I think we're going to be it'll be a lot easier for everybody to work off the yellow highlighted one.
Okay. Any commission questions for Rob Buonamici, or any questions to get it going? Seeing none from the commission, let's take it out to public comment. Jeremy?
I'll take these in order. If you didn't fill out a card yesterday or today, and I miss you at the end, just fill out a card and bring it up. But first one I had was Fred Volz.
For the record, Fred Volz, and I won't repeat myself from the comments I made yesterday, which I stand behind, but I think there's one thing that you folks can do to help satisfy both sides of this equation, especially regarding the setbacks on the 5 roads that are still at issue. And that would be to work with the U.S. Forest Service in not just having a sign at the trailheads or at the beginning of a campground or 1 or 2 sporadic signs, but actually doing a very comprehensive signage, both for the trappers so that they know what their boundaries are, as well as to mitigate the fear factor for the public who may wander off of trails, roads, campgrounds, picnic areas, etc. And so I would encourage you to have a very comprehensive program of signage as a mitigating factor. Thank you.
Jean Perry Jones.
I'm Jean Perry Jones, Mount Charleston, also property owner in Lower Kyle. And again, I spoke yesterday, so I'm not going to elaborate on a lot of those issues. I'd like to thank you again for your work on 419, and I would like the written record to show that while I ask you to adopt 419 today that you've been working on, I also ask you to modify it with the following position of the town advisory boards that are in the Spring Mountain Ranges. That's the Mount Charleston Town Advisory Board and Mountain Springs, as well as the Spring Mountain Volunteer Association, letters of which you have. And at the end of my testimony, I would like to read the letter into the public record. As well as these are in keeping with the Bureau of Land Management standards as public health and safety issues. First off, we still want the 1 mile setback of traps from campgrounds and facilities, picnic areas, structures, private properties, ski area boundaries, trails and roads, whether they're designated or not. Again, the public doesn't recognize if it's a designated or not. If they're using them, according to them, they're designated. And people also don't just hike on trails and use trails. For instance, it's wood gathering season up there, so you get a lot of people out in the woods gathering firewood, and also pine nut gathering is going on during this time of the year and in later months during trapping season, so you get a lot of people not sticking to the trails. Number 2, we'd like you to identify traps with the name of the person, a phone number, permit number on it for accountability, and should there be an issue, then the trapper could be notified. Like if my dog's caught, I can call the trapper. Number 3, signage, both to alert the public when and where trapping occurs, as well as to alert them how to report any issues. And flagging of those areas also with a flag to show people where the danger of a trap is so that they can avoid that. Number 4, visitation, 24 hours or less with mandatory personal visitation of the traps, not binocular visitation. Number 5, allow the public to tamper with traps if there is an imminent health and safety issue, such as their pet is caught. Or maybe people are doing a remote camp and then after they're set up camp, they notice that there's a trap very close and they've got little children around. Then they would want to do something to keep the kids safe. Number 6, a reporting system posted with signage about the trapping.
30 seconds.
Including the in-Dow phone address, contact information, so that they can report non-target species that are trapped in there. 7, public service announcements, multimedia, TV, radio, newspaper, when and where trapping will occur. Most people don't even know that there is trapping going on. And then finally, to rehear and revisit this at least annually so we can see if it's working or if we need to adjust it. I have a question for you though. Can these items be incorporated today into 419? And if not, how and when can the commission address these issues? Can you answer me that?
Some of the items that you brought up are NRS, and they fall outside the bounds of where we're at today.
Okay, so we can't address any of these today.
Many of those issues we cannot address today.
In the future we can?
No, just a quick explanation. When he says NRS, what that means is that they're statutory. In other words, there's already a trap visitation statute, and we have a statute on trap registration. It's in the laws, and so we as a commission only deal with regulations. We cannot pass a regulation that overrides a statute. So anything in that area has to occur through the legislature.
Okay, so therefore on the visitation and the signage and all that, we have to deal with that through NRS?
The signage would be a little bit different because that's really federal public lands. And I have a question. I don't know if there's anything that this commission can do about putting signs out on federal public lands. I don't know if we have any authority to do so.
Okay, and may I read this letter into?
If you could, we're coming up on
I would just say that we've got a copy, and there's a lot of folks who want to speak. That's my.
You do have a copy, and I would really like the public to hear the letter, so if you guys could read it, that would be wonderful.
That'll be at the discretion of the chair as your 3 minutes are.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Stephanie Myers. And Stephanie, I have you listed just as yourself today, is that?
Stephanie Myers, Lee Canyon. These couple of minutes are in response to comments made by a commissioner yesterday. If bad things are preventable, they should be prevented. If they're preventable, they shouldn't happen. Even one surprised pet dog with its owner in tow caught in a trap is one too many. 200 feet from the 5 roads that you mentioned in your draft is not enough space. And like Jean Perry Jones, I'd like to remind you that the town boards of Mount Charleston, Mountain Springs, the Spring Mountain Volunteer Association, and in a couple of weeks, Indian Springs also, have asked you for a mile from all buildings, all roads, every road, campgrounds, picnic areas, and all trails. A mile. These town boards represent the people, and Mount Charleston and Mountain Springs are the only two communities that actually lie within the area of the Spring Mountain National Recreation Area. Traps are inherently dangerous. Traps are inherently dangerous. Because traps are left to spring, they are left unattended in the wild, they are hidden. Only one person knows for sure where they are. Traps are roadside bombs. They are IEDs to anything landing on them that weighs more than a few pounds. The spacers for a trap for an animal to escape, useless unless you're a very small animal or a bird. When the traps spring shut, they clamp on, they hold on until they're released. Those make traps inherently dangerous. Dogs are not required to be on leashes in all parts of rural Nevada. People do not bring their dogs to Mount Charleston to keep them on leashes unless they're on a popular trail, hiking trail, where they're going to meet other people, other dogs. Then they put them on leashes. Most pet owners choose a road or an out-of-the-way place, and after looking around to be sure that nobody's there, then they walk or run or hike or bike with their dogs and enjoy a little time together, unlike their everyday existence of being cooped up in an apartment or a house all day long. That's the attraction of the Spring Mountains National Recreation Area to those pet owners who live in the urban desert we call Las Vegas. That's why they go. We're not just concerned about dogs here, it's a people issue too. Should we put leashes on little children when their parents choose to enjoy the alpine paradise of Mount Charleston? People are not aware that there are traps in the Spring Mountains, and why should they be? There are no signs, no flagging. When my dog was caught in a trap, it was a warm, beautiful, bright day with no snow during trapping season in Max Canyon. This weather is not unusual for Max Canyon in December, just depends on the year.
Are
Sunshine
we wrapping up,
had been...
Stephanie,
Yes.
are we wrapping up? We're
Okay,
beyond the 3
let me
minutes.
just finish this paragraph, please. Sunshine had been through training and was completely under voice command. I was mountain biking when Sunshine vanished, and I was huffing and puffing, and I didn't notice immediately. As soon as I was aware that she wasn't close by, I stopped. I thought maybe she'd run after a rabbit. Even after living in Mount Charleston for 25 years, I had no idea that there were traps along Max Canyon. How should I have known? There were no signs, no flagging, no warnings of any kind for the public. Sunny, a wonderful golden retriever, could not come to me because she was caught in a leg-hold trap. Unfortunately, she didn't bark. I called and called, riding my bike, then my car up and down Max Canyon. It took me 5 hours to find her. Her leg was bloody from her wound. She had bitten into the trap so hard that she required emergency surgery to remove 5 teeth. Later, the NDOW official who came said, Max Canyon wasn't even a road, and so it's just tough luck. So I ask you, should a trapper be able to have more rights than an average person enjoying the Spring Mountain National Recreation Area? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dave Stillwater? Dave, your card says Nevada Trappers Association. Are you their designated? Okay, just for yourself.
Yeah, my name is Dave Stillwater. I think the main problem us as trappers made in the first place is we came up with this map. We were trying to show that we were trying to get along with everybody on Mount Charleston. We came up with this big map. Basically, depending on how you look at it, those trails are 30 or 40 miles. Now, maybe if we would have started on out by giving them 3 trails, instead of about the 15 they got on it now, we would have been better off, because then we could have just gave them more trails. Because whatever we put on this map, they wanted more and more and more. Basically, there's some people in this room that if they could close trapping down from Earth to the moon, they wouldn't want to do it that way. But basically what it amounts to, they keep adding roads more and more and more. We were nice to start to give something. I think our problem was that we gave too much to start with. One person that lives on up in that area, He said there's been 5 dogs caught up there in 15 years. That's 1 dog every 3 years. We don't like to catch anybody's dogs, but at the same time, we should be just as much entitled to that land as those people that are up there. I kind of agree on the signs, although I'm sure you guys can't make anybody do it, but if I lived up in that area and I was concerned about my pets or something, I would put up signs that said trapping and hunting. Basically, if you walk down a trail, you know, there's dangers no matter what, snakes, cactuses. I'm training 3 dogs right now, and I took them on out to the desert, laid down the scent trail for them to follow. They're young pups yet, but they got into so many cactuses on out there, it was unreal. To me, there's a lot of dangers on out there. There's a heck of a lot more danger than from traps. I appreciate the committee. You guys have put up all the time you've spent on this, and I hope we come up with a solution today, because to be honest with you, I'm sick and tired of seeing you guys' faces and a lot of other people's faces on out here. But even the people I disagree with, a lot of them are real good people. I've talked with them, I had good conversations with them. It's
30
kind of funny,
seconds.
but I consider them friends. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Krim. Joe, I had your card from yesterday. Jana Wright.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, for the record, Jana Wright. I live here in Clark County. I think I made my comments yesterday that I appreciate the trapping subcommittee. We've spent hours and hours and hours talking about this. And the subcommittee has come up with a proposal. Is it everything I personally want? No. But I think it's a compromise, that you have reasons that you have put this proposal on paper, and I support it. So I would urge the commission to accept and move forward the regulation as proposed by the trapping subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Lane. The next ones were just general items. Gil.
For the record, Gil Yannick, as a private citizen, we've all been listening to this issue on trapping for over 3 years now, and I think we're at a point where there's some good compromises being made by both sides, and I think it's time to just get on with it. I've talked to trappers, I've talked to some of the people who live in the area, and they both have some good arguments. I think, you know, it was just mentioned, maybe a concerned citizen would put up some signs to alert their friends, or if they have these community meetings, to make the people aware that there is trapping going on in this particular area. It's not on the trails, it's off the trails, so just, you know, be advised that this exists. It's the real world. And I just hope we can move on to a new subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Sullivan. John, are you just representing yourself today, or NTA?
No, I'm representing the Clark County Advisory Board.
Okay.
So if I could get another minute or two, if I run over, I'd appreciate it. Yesterday, we heard testimony from Paul Dixon, Chairman of the Clark County Advisory Board for Wildlife. He reported that the overwhelming testimony we heard in meeting after meeting, month after month on this issue, was for trapping on Mount Charleston and against new regulations by the citizens in this county. One meeting Commissioner Macbeth attended on this very issue, I think we signed in 88 people at that CAB meeting, in which the predominant issue was trapping. I think we spent 2.5 hours on it at that very one meeting, and I counted in a rough count, 80 people testified for trapping on Mount Charleston and 8 were against. And I think that was typical of what we heard from the residents in Clark County. Initially, we heard stories of dogs being injured in traps. One of our members is a veterinarian. He did some research by calling every vet and animal hospital in Clark County. Every single place reported that they have never treated one pet in this county from an injury from a leg hold trap, ever. Some of these vets have been in practice here for decades. This issue boils down to closing areas to trapping. In 3 places in these regulations, it says trapping is prohibited. I think before a wildlife body closes any area to hunting, fishing, or trapping, we have to ask ourselves, is there a compelling reason to do so? Myself and the Clark County Advisory Board thinks that in the case of the trails, it's yes. In the case of the campgrounds, it's yes. In the case of the picnic areas, it's yes. It kind of passes the common sense test. I don't think we should be shooting deer within 1,000 feet of these popular trails. We shouldn't be shooting deer within 1,000 feet of these campgrounds, half-mile of residences, nor should be trapping. I think it passes the common sense test. The dirt roads in questions, the answer is no. What is the justification? One dog caught 147 feet off one road 5 years ago. Is that a compelling reason to impose these new restrictions? I don't think so. What about the precedent? What if next year another dog is caught 147 feet off of some dirt road in a remote canyon several miles outside of Winnemucca? Do we then impose new regulations for that Jeep trail as well? So the precedent here is very important. There's a lot worse things that can happen to a dog that is allowed to run loose in these remote areas than being nipped in the foot by a foothold trap. I have caught my own dogs in traps several times, and I can assure you that the dog's dignity was hurt more than his foot. I ask you all to support the vote and recommendations of the Clark County Advisory Board for Wildlife on this issue in approving the regulations as drafted, with the lone exception of the dirt roads in question. On a bigger picture, I just want to say, trapping in this state is probably the most cost-effective predator management program ever designed. 10,000 plus predators are removed from the big game herds every year by private trappers who pay for the privilege. On the humane issue, a bobcat or fox is restrained for some hours in a foothold trap, then dispatched by a .22 pistol. Compared to what? In the natural world, we have rabies, parvo, plague, mange, starving to death, too old or too injured to hunt anymore, killed or injured by other animals, killed or injured by a car crossing a road. Trapping is more humane to our wildlife than any of these quote, unquote, natural causes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a copy of the highlighted version, right?
Yes, I do.
Now, that Clark County Advisory Board's position is to go with everything as it's highlighted, except for on the bottom of page 4, section E, striking all of section E. Is that?
No.
Am I clear? Did I miss something?
No, you did.
I want to make sure what the position was.
Thank you very much. For clarification, we do recommend that under E, there is one road singled out, the Max Canyon Road, 1 mile of the Max Canyon Road from the intersection of Highway 156 have the 200-foot offset, and the other 4 roads be deleted.
1 mile from the intersection
of Highway 156. The Max Canyon Road, the first 1 mile of the Max Canyon Road from the intersection of Highway 156 have that 200-foot. Trapping is prohibited within 200 feet off of the Max Canyon Road from the intersection of Highway 156.
and striking the other 4 roads in question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That was.
And who do we have next? Commissioner Booth?
Mike Reese.
Oh, he's not here today.
Rex Flowers, I had you down as general comments.
Rex Flowers, I'm going to speak first as the chairman of Washoe Cab. The Clark County Cab had the recommendations from the trapping committee. They reviewed them. They came back with another proposal. I would hope that you would support that proposal. They did have public input at their meeting, and And it's very important to remember that they did act on what the third version was that came out. On a personal note, I'd like to again remind everybody, these are public lands, they're multi-use lands, and I think everybody has to assume a certain amount of responsibility and knowledge that others are using that property, and take that into consideration. And everybody has an equal right to be there. Thank you.
Paul Dixon.
For the record, Paul Dixon speaking on behalf of myself at this meeting. I have, in other roles, overseen a lot of discussion on this. And one of the things that continues to disturb me a little bit is that by people saying my town advisory board voted on this and therefore we have more precedent because we live there for public lands around us than I do living in the valley for those same public lands. That kind of bothers me as a sportsman and a resident of Clark County. I have as much right to those public lands as they do. And from a county advisory board perspective, we have in your trapping regulation dealt with every issue that would protect those people, whether it's picnic grounds, hiking trails, things that those residents have access to. When you start getting into rural areas and rural roads that are unimproved, unless you change the wording in what you have right now, I believe that we're setting ourselves up for a legislative debate in the upcoming trapping regulations there's draft LCBs sitting out there where somebody's going to try to make more out of the decision you're making here today in precedent space. And I think you need to be very careful when you say you're going to do restrictions on unimproved roads, that you do it in a way that it restricts it to, very specifically, the roads that are unimproved on Mount Charleston, not across the state. That's a recommendation, and that's why the Clark County CAB, I believe, came back with a recommendation just to take that away unless there's a language change. Thank you.
That's all the cards I had at this point.
Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for more discussion and a motion. Commissioner Rain.
Rather than repeat anything I've said, I'll just ask, unless you'd like to hear it, that Suzanne reiterate everything that I had, and I actually got notes on it. I'll give it to her from yesterday back into the record for this particular item as well as yesterday, so you don't have to hear it again. But you know, I mean, IEDs, roadside bombs, dangerous. I've never been overseas, never gone to Iraq, but this ain't it. This isn't dangerous. You know, I mean, it's just a whole nother world. And personally, I'd like to see them no change in the current regulation. However, Clark County's version, Clark County Advisory Board, version isn't all that bad. It's a second option.
Commissioner Wallace.